This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to today's Roundup. We have a heavy set of stories today, ranging from tragic street violence to decades-old cold cases finally seeing a resolution through modern forensic science. Let's get started.
A baby in a stroller dies from Brooklyn gunfire.
DNA finally links Ted Bundy to a 1974 death.
A mother's resentencing bid for child torture is denied.
A lawsuit alleges jail neglect led to a death.
A Florida man is indicted for murdering a toddler.
An Arizona love triangle ends in a fatal shooting.
A Portland clerk is killed over $25.
A mother avoids jail after leaving her baby outside.
Starting in Brooklyn today, the community of East Williamsburg is in mourning after a 7-month-old girl, Kaori Patterson Moore, was killed by a stray bullet while being pushed in her stroller. The shooting happened around 1:15 in the afternoon, near the Bushwick houses. According to Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, video footage captured 2 suspects on a moped driving near the intersection of Moore Street. The passenger on the back of the moped pulled out a gun and fired at least 2 rounds toward a corner where several adults and children were standing. It was a senseless act of violence that turned a routine walk into a nightmare. The child's mother didn't even realize what had happened immediately. She ducked into a nearby bodega for safety and only then discovered her daughter was bleeding from a head wound. The father desperately rushed the infant to Woodhull Hospital, but she was tragically pronounced dead shortly after arrival.
The aftermath of the shooting was chaotic, as the suspects attempted to flee the scene on their moped. Just 2 blocks away, they crashed into an oncoming car, an impact so violent that both men were thrown from the scooter. One of the suspects hit the pavement with such force that his shoes flew off. Police were able to take one person of interest into custody following that crash, while they continue to search for at least one other individual involved. Mayor Zohran Mamdani spoke at a press conference, expressing the city's grief over a life that had barely begun. Witnesses described the heartbreaking scene of the mother screaming in the deli and the father running with the lifeless child. This case has sparked renewed outrage over gun violence and the use of mopeds in criminal activities across the city, as investigators work to bring everyone responsible for this tragedy to justice.
Now to a cold case. In a major breakthrough for a 51-year-old cold case, DNA testing has officially linked the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy to the 1974 death of 17-year-old Laura Ann Aime in Utah. Laura went missing on Halloween night in 1974 after leaving a party to go to a convenience store. Her body was discovered a month later in American Fork Canyon. She had been bound, beaten, and left without clothing. While Bundy had verbally hinted at his involvement before his 1980 execution, the case remained technically unsolved for decades. The breakthrough came using a vial of Bundy's blood that was discovered in Florida back in 2011, which allowed investigators to create a full DNA profile. This profile was entered into the FBI's national database, providing the missing link needed to confirm what many had suspected for half a century. It brings a somber resolution to a case that has haunted the Utah County community.
The Utah County Sheriff's Office held a news conference to share the findings, with Sergeant Mike Reynolds acknowledging the long-standing pain felt by Laura's family. He described her as a free spirit who loved the outdoors, a life cut short during Bundy's murderous spree across the western United States. At the time of the murder, Bundy was actually a law student at the University of Utah, using his perceived charm and intelligence to mask his predatory nature. This confirmation is part of a broader effort by law enforcement to use modern technology to close the books on Bundy's many suspected victims. While the sergeant noted that they can't truly offer full closure, the definitive evidence provides a sense of justice that was delayed for far too long. It serves as a reminder of the persistence of investigators who refuse to let these victims be forgotten, even decades after the perpetrator is gone.
Next, a tragic update. A California judge has denied a resentencing request from Pearl Fernandez, the mother convicted of the horrific 2013 torture and murder of her 8-year-old son, Gabriel. Fernandez is currently serving life without the possibility of parole for a case that shocked the nation due to its sheer brutality. In her latest petition, she claimed her original guilty plea was coerced and that her defense counsel was ineffective. However, Judge George G. Lomelli dismissed these claims during an emotional hearing where family members spoke out against reopening the wounds of the past. The details of the abuse Gabriel suffered are truly stomach-turning. He was beaten with clubs, burned with lighters, and forced to eat cat litter and feces. Prosecutors reminded the court that Fernandez was directly involved in every aspect of this cruelty, including keeping the boy locked in a small wooden box for months. The judge's decision ensures she will remain in prison for the rest of her life.
The case of Gabriel Fernandez became a symbol of systemic failure within the child welfare system. But this specific legal battle focused on Pearl's attempt to walk back her admission of guilt. Her boyfriend, Isaro Aguirre, was also convicted and sentenced to death for his role in the boy's murder. During the recent hearing, Gabriel's relatives expressed their exhaustion at having to return to court to fight these petitions. They argued that Pearl's claims of being a victim herself or being forced into a plea deal do not align with the evidence of the prolonged and calculated torture Gabriel endured. The medical reports from 2013 showed the boy had BBs embedded in his skin, broken ribs, and a fractured skull. By denying the resentencing, the court has upheld the original judgment that the level of depravity involved in Gabriel's death warrants the harshest possible penalty under the law, providing some measure of finality for the family.
Moving to Colorado now. A new lawsuit has been filed against Jefferson County and the medical provider VitalCore following the death of Courtney Tinker, a woman with lupus who died alone in her jail cell. The complaint, filed by Tinker's mother, alleges that deputies and medical staff failed to provide necessary emergency care after finding her slumped over the wheel of her car. Despite Tinker telling officers she couldn't breathe and was experiencing chest pains, she was taken to a lower-level urgent care clinic instead of a nearby Level 1 hospital. The lawsuit argues that this decision was driven by a desire to save money rather than provide adequate medical evaluation. After a brief check, she was cleared and booked into the detention facility on failure to appear warrants. Her condition continued to deteriorate behind bars, and the suit claims that with proper monitoring and timely intervention, her death could have been entirely prevented. It highlights a troubling pattern of medical neglect in correctional facilities.
The legal team representing Tinker's family points out that the symptoms she displayed were objectively serious, especially given her known history with lupus. While the district attorney's office previously stated there was no evidence of criminal conduct by the staff, this civil suit seeks to hold the county accountable for what it calls a systemic failure in inmate care. The complaint details how Tinker was hyperventilating and fatigued, yet was still processed into the jail system, where she was left without the specialized care her condition required. The facility she was initially taken to, Health One Southwest ER, is described in the suit as insufficient for stabilizing someone in her state. This case joins a growing number of legal challenges against private medical providers contracted by jails, raising questions about the quality of health care provided to those in custody. The family is seeking damages and a change in how medical emergencies are handled by the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office.
Now to Florida. In Melbourne, Florida, 37-year-old Clifford Long has been indicted for first-degree murder after a violent home invasion that left a 2-year-old girl dead. The victim, Blessin Leitner, had just celebrated her birthday days before she was shot in her bedroom. The indictment also includes 2 counts of attempted murder for the shooting of the girl's grandparents, who were seriously injured but survived. According to police, Long broke into the multi-generational home late at night while the child's parents were away at a concert. One of the surviving victims was able to identify Long, noting his distinct appearance, which investigators described as having a head shaped like a football. Long allegedly admitted to his brother that he committed the act because the family wouldn't give up money, suggesting a robbery was the motive. His cold demeanor during police interviews, where he claimed he didn't shed a tear for the child, has added to the public's horror over the case.
The details of the crime are particularly chilling, as the grandfather reported seeing Long shoot the toddler before stepping over her body to fire at him. Long was already in custody for a separate brutal attack involving a machete when the murder charges were brought forward. In that incident, he and his brother allegedly stabbed a homeless man over 30 times during a drug dispute. Despite the mounting evidence and his alleged confession to his brother, Long has denied involvement to the police, claiming he was at a gas station at the time of the shooting. However, the physical descriptions and witness testimony have provided a strong foundation for the prosecution. The community has been left reeling from the loss of such a young life in what appears to be a calculated and heartless act of violence. Long remains held without bond as the legal process moves toward a trial for the murder of little Blessin.
Next, an Arizona case. A bizarre and deadly love triangle in Mesa, Arizona, has resulted in second-degree murder charges for 40-year-old Taylor Renee Roediger. The incident began when Roediger's former roommate arrived at her home late at night, apparently intoxicated and seeking to rekindle a relationship with Roediger's current boyfriend. According to court documents, Roediger watched the woman on her security monitor and initially tried to handle the situation by asking her to leave. When a verbal altercation broke out, Roediger actually left the house for a walk, hoping the situation would resolve itself in her absence. However, when she returned, she found the woman naked in her kitchen with the boyfriend. The situation escalated further when the victim allegedly suggested a sexual encounter involving all 3 of them, leading to a physical fight. Roediger eventually retrieved a firearm from her purse and the night ended in a fatal shooting after the victim and the boyfriend reportedly threatened to beat Roediger during the ongoing confrontation.
The narrative of the night is convoluted, with shifting accounts of what happened inside the residence. Roediger told police she felt threatened and that the victim had tried to strike her before she went for her gun. She also claimed that she waited outside at one point until it sounded like the other two had gone into the bedroom together, only for the argument to reignite when she stepped back inside. The victim's name has not yet been released by the Mesa Police Department, but the case has drawn significant attention due to the strange circumstances leading up to the violence. Roediger is now facing serious prison time as investigators piece together the timeline of the fight and the final moments before the shots were fired. It is a tragic example of how personal disputes and complex relationship dynamics can spiral out of control with lethal consequences, leaving one woman dead and another behind bars facing a murder charge.
Shifting to Oregon. In Portland, a 21-year-old man named Michael Payne is facing first-degree murder charges after a robbery at a Plaid Pantry convenience store turned fatal. The victim, 57-year-old clerk Ernesto Castellanos, was gunned down during a late-night shift. Surveillance footage captured the suspect, who was wearing a black hoodie with a Michael Myers mask and the phrase, "here to crash the party," as he lingered in the store before the shooting. After the incident, Payne eventually turned himself into the police, reportedly telling officers that he had messed up and that the killing was not worth the $25 he took from the register. The footage shows a cold and calculated sequence of events where the suspect touched various items in the store, waited at the counter, and then shot the clerk twice before kicking him and fleeing. It is a heartbreaking case of a life taken for a trivial amount of money, leaving a family and a community in mourning.
The details from the probable cause affidavit are particularly disturbing, describing how Payne allegedly spoke unprompted to officers about the weight of his actions during the ride to the station. He seemed to realize the gravity of what he had done only after the fact, noting the small sum of money involved. The victim, Ernesto Castellanos, was shot in the chest and neck, wounds that the medical examiner ruled as the cause of death. The community has expressed outrage over the senselessness of the crime, especially given the distinctive clothing the suspect wore, which made him easily identifiable on camera. Payne is also charged with first-degree robbery and unlawful use of a weapon. This tragedy has sparked discussions about the safety of late-night retail workers and the devastating impact of impulsive violent crime. As the legal case proceeds, the focus remains on the loss of a man who was simply doing his job when he was targeted.
Finally, a Florida sentencing. A 23-year-old Florida mother, Kelly Ward, has avoided jail time after a disturbing incident where she left her 3-month-old daughter outside in the cold overnight. The child suffered life-altering injuries as a result of the exposure. Ward pleaded no contest to child neglect causing great bodily harm, and a judge decided to withhold adjudication, sentencing her instead to 48 months of probation. The conditions of her probation include a substance abuse evaluation and parenting classes. The incident occurred in November 2023, when temperatures dropped into the mid-50s, which is considered dangerously cold for an infant. According to court documents, Ward and her boyfriend were seen outside with the baby multiple times during the night, despite other residents in the home warning that it was too cold. When the baby was finally brought inside the next morning, she was described as lethargic and pale, having suffered through what appeared to be night terrors and extreme physical distress during the night.
The circumstances surrounding the night are complex, involving a disagreement among the 9 people living in the home about whether Ward's boyfriend should be allowed to stay. Some residents reported a weird vibe from the boyfriend, but he remained at the house to take Ward to a doctor's appointment the next day. While no charges were filed against the boyfriend, the focus remained on Ward's responsibility as a parent. The child's injuries are described as permanent, a tragic outcome for a situation that many believe was entirely avoidable. The decision to grant probation instead of jail time has been met with mixed reactions, as the severity of the child's condition is weighed against the legal standards for neglect. Ward, who was pregnant at the time of the incident, will now be under strict supervision as she navigates the requirements of her sentence. This case serves as a somber reminder of the critical importance of protecting vulnerable infants from environmental hazards and neglect.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for these important updates. We will be back tomorrow with more of the stories that matter most to you.